trying to defend a specific God anymore. Where if you look at, how did she phrase it? That's what God is. God is not the bearded guy in the sky. He's wonder, he's mystery, he's this nebulous, ill-defined, not really defined thing. And I don't think the atheists on the show did themselves much credit when they said, my definition, and I quote here, my definition of God is humanity. And I think it's a problem when atheists shy away from not believing in God in any form and trying to redefine what it is in their own sort of sense.
Yeah, because our concept, that I was taught of God is he is some guy up in the sky, and he's watching over everything, and he does everything, and you pray to God and you ask God for favors, and so how can that be nature? But I wonder how much thought Oprah's given to the subject of atheism. But there seems to me there are a lot of people who think that are Christians or theists who just think, there has to be somebody, because first of all, the world didn't just come about by itself, and without that, what is the point of your life? If we hear that a lot. What is the point of your existence if you don't believe in God? Well, we're here. I mean, we were born, we live, we die, and is there any point to it? I don't know.
And I think the main point of this was trying to say that, I should say the overall subject that they were trying to go for here in this interview was, Oprah was trying to imply that atheists can't feel all of the universe, can't feel its wonder, its mystery, when that's just not the case. I mean, the natural explanation has always been so much more wonderful than a supernatural one. And sometimes one of my favorite things to do sometimes is flip through images of the Hubble telescope, and look sometimes while I'm listening to Monty Python's The Galaxy Song. Try it sometimes. It's a great deal of fun. So but that's looking at nature just for what it is. You can feel inspired. You can really feel excited. I've always been into science. I've been a scientist since day one. And so I love going out there, discovering what it is. You're not settling for it's just, God did it, or, there's something supernatural that made it. And then you're kind of like, well, was that the best they could do?
Well, many of the mysteries, the mysteries of the universe, years and years ago, there were many more mysteries because we simply didn't know things.
Right.
Things that are no longer, if you listen to Dave Silverman and Bill O'Reilly, he still doesn't know why the tide goes in and out, which we do now know. But
we've known that for a long time, actually.
Well, as Stephen Colbert said, Bill O'Reilly's like St. Thomas Aquinas, in that he's a 14th century understanding of science. But back in the year 1000, people didn't know. They just didn't have the knowledge. So to them, that was a miracle. The tide comes in, the water goes in, the water goes out. Well, we now know it's not. And there are other things that we know are not miracles we're finding out about. And it's funny how the miracles seem to be disappearing as we go on, as we learn more.
Well, and I think you bring up an interesting point. What did they know a couple thousand years ago? But as I study history a little bit more, and I have to say, in school I hated history, but now that I'm out of it and just free to read whatever I want, I'm so much more into it. But I have to say, if you look at ancient history, there were people back then who were figuring this out back in the day. It's just up to this point it's been so suppressed.
Right.
I mean, they calculated the circumference of the Earth 2,000 years ago. A rather crude method, and they were, I think, within 15% accuracy.
Wow.
And we had to rediscover that thousands of years later. So, I look at, some of the works of Richard Carrier. He writes about science in the Roman Empire. And he might actually, I wonder if he might stumble across something that we haven't rediscovered yet.
Well, you also hear that people, when Columbus in 1492 sailed, that he didn't know if he was going to fall off the edge of the earth. Now, they knew, at that point, they knew the earth was round. That's why he thought he could get to India. He just didn't know we were in between, didn't know what was in there. So, Yeah, so the miracles have slowed down, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have as many. As a matter of fact, the Catholic Church, I believe, has changed, and I wish we had a Catholic here. You used to have to do with 2 or 3 miracles to become a saint. Now you got to do 1.
Oh, wow.
Well,
I think the Catholic Church, the way under this new Pope, I think the Catholic Church is going to be atheist in about 20 years.
Well, we can only hope so.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, that's the way they're going. I mean, you see all these statements by the Pope and all the miracles. Well, that reminds me of the one funny story about what they said. Was it the Mother Teresa film miracle, where they didn't have the lighting correctly?
Okay, yeah.
And what it was, for those of you who don't know, the film crew that was originally going to go document Mother Teresa was using a new type of film that Kodak gave them just before they went out. They never had a chance to test it. And the building they were going into was poorly lit. And under the old film, they wouldn't be able to get any usable shots from it. But they took the film anyway. And later on, they were looking over the film, like the cameraman and the journalists were looking over the film and saw that it actually came out pretty good despite the low lighting. And the cameraman was about to say, well, kudos to the guys at Kodak. And the journalist jumped up and yelled, "It's a miracle." Not even thinking that they were using a different kind of film that could actually record this now.
Well, if he's a follower of Mother Teresa, of course he would think it's a miracle,
Right.
But, yeah. Now, the last show we started reading letters to the editor. We get a lot of letters to the editor about religion. Now, lately we haven't had many because most of the letters to the editor are focusing on the elections coming up.
Right. I mean, of course.
But
with all the other things going on in the world, there's...
Yeah. Well, we have big elections here, and we have some very contentious ones around here.
Yeah.
Not in New York City so much, but some in West York and in suburban school district that are very contentious around here. But we get letters to the editor once in a while. Now, our old friend Ralph Sierra. Now, Ralph Sierra used to write letters very damning people of not of faith, and he's really mellowed lately. Now he writes letters. He has one here. Let's see, when was this from? This was from Friday, October 18th. I heard something on the radio the other day that described in a different way how God affects our lives. The show was about people who have lost a loved one. This young wife talked about a loving and touching way about her husband. Well, why did God take her husband then? It's a young wife. That sounds pretty cruel to me.
Yeah.
But Ralph sees this as, may God bless her and her husband and their faith in, well, her husband's gone, but in their faith in God. Well, oftentimes we get letters, we prayed to God and our son's okay or our daughter's okay. Well, how about the doctors? Do you think they had something to do with it? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe they had. But they see that as miraculous. Well, it's not. But how about the people who died? People who pray and die.
Right.
What about them?
Yeah, exactly. And what was it? Pope John Paul II, I believe, who survived an assassination attempt.
Yeah, I think.
And he claimed that the bullet was redirected by supernatural. And we're like, well, you do realize a team of doctors worked on you for 6 hours.
Yeah.
And that's, you look at, that's the great thing about modern medicine is, it's got its problems here and there, but generally I wouldn't want to live at any other time.
No. Well, it'll get even better. Of course, as far as bullets, well, I mean, Larry Flint didn't die from his gunshot wounds, did he? Larry Flint and the Pope are the same. Are they the same level there, I guess, because he survived too. Maybe God directed that one too. Crazy, but the people who believe that kind of thing, and I often think that people say we prayed to God and He saved our daughter or saved our son. What about the people who lost a son or daughter? Do they think, gee, we didn't pray enough, or we didn't pray right, or God doesn't like us? How bad do they feel that their kid died or their loved one died when others were saved?
Right.
I just wonder how they take that.
I mean, I'd have to say that part of what caused me to start really questioning my faith growing up, and the faith of my parents, was just how much there was a God explanation to everything, and it actually frustrated and made me angry at times when I was looking for real answers, And that's all I was getting. And then I couldn't help but notice that no matter what happened, you could come up with a reason to give God the credit, when, you know, it just seemed like just a cop-out. Like, you know, it's you can make God whatever you want to be at this particular moment. And I think that's what really made me so uneasy about the whole thing.
Yeah, for atheists, the more we think about it, the more that doesn't make any sense. The more, as when I was younger, the more I thought about that, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, I think my atheism started when someone asked me, where does God come from? If you think nothing can come from something can come from nothing, where does God come from? That got me thinking, and the more it all kind of fell into place for me. But look at Oprah now. She thinks God is like nature. Yeah,
God is nature, or
nature is nature. Nature is,
or it's humanity, or it's love. You know, or it's they can bend it to every which way they could say it.
And you hear, well, look at the beautiful mountains and the trees, and how about when that mountain, the rains come and there's a mountain slide that comes down and buries a village? Is that beautiful? You know, I mean, there's ugly things in the world too. It's all you know. Just all fits together. So,
right.
But people make of it what they want, you know. And of course, the answer always is God works in mysterious ways. Some of them are very mysterious. You know, the people who die and the people who live, and you know, the natural disasters. But if you know, we think of it, I guess, as rationalization. People are rationalizing these things.
Right.
I mean, why did the storm hit? You know, well, it just did. You know, that's where the tornado came, because the winds were, and the atmosphere pressure was right, and you know.
And I would have to say that, to me, the biggest piece of knowledge that would threaten belief in God is not even evolution. I think it's knowing something about statistics, where you realize there's a statistical probability of everything happening. And when you've got, you know, millions of people, you know, praying or thinking, you know, trying to invoke something from God, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to get it just from sheer chance. Yeah. And whoever gets it, you know, great. Yeah. If they don't, you know, the answer to their prayers was no. So I think actually knowing something about statistics is a greater challenge to faith than anything.
Well, you probably learned that in college, didn't you? You know, a lot of people think that when you go to college, you get brainwashed.
Although it's interesting you bring that up, because I know that was going. Whenever I was going to come out to my parents, I knew that was going to be something they were going to ask about. And as I said before, I mean, my doubt started way before that. But it was really just being away from the constant brainwashing of religion and being exposed to other ideas. Not necessarily from a standpoint of people like trying to force their beliefs on me or anything. It was just being exposed to them, getting to know them, and really, you know, really thinking like, hey, you know, what do you believe? You know, it's not I wasn't trying to believe anything else. I was curious. Yeah. And I'll never forget the one time one thing Penn State did for a while was they actually had open mic debates during lunch, which actually went fairly well, where you had people, you know, just giving up points. And due to my background, I ended up at odds with a lot of other people in the college crowd. But one thing I couldn't help but notice is I was doing my best to present my points as, you know, calmly and even toned as I could. And people there were doing the same, where we were actually having back and forth exchanges where nobody was resorting to loudmouth rhetoric. They were just, you know, starting to just make their points. And that's what really got through to me in terms of questioning everything, is just people were willing to just take me through the explanations. And it wasn't like they were trying to force it on me. It's just I got to learn about it and make my own decisions.
Well, coming from the rural background, where you don't meet a lot of different people, I'm sure that was quite a shock. I mean, I grew up on the south side of Milwaukee, so it's a big city. So I got to, but even when I went off to college, I met people that from a different social class, and, you know, had different ideas than I'd ever met before, and that was broadening then. And I'm sure for someone from rural background, where you're homeschooled, I'm sure that really was quite eye-opening to see people with different opinions, different lifestyles, different, just different everything, And of course, I grew up in the 60s, so we had the Vietnam War going on and protests, and and I mentioned that did your father see this as a rejection of his values? When I grew up in the 60s, the big thing was parents, fathers and sons fought about hair. We grew our hair long, and I think they saw it as a rejection of their way of life. Okay. How can you have that long hair? Look, that's what girls, and this was, the fights over hair were just silly to me. And, when I looked at it as I got older, I thought, boy, what a stupid thing to fight over, Because eventually we'll cut it. Well, I lost my hair, so it didn't matter. But eventually, most of us cut our hair and went on our way. But to fight over silly things like that. But I think they saw it more as a symbol of, as I said, we rejected their values,
Right.
And
I mean, I never really got that impression from them, at least thus far. There doesn't seem to be a feeling of rejection there. Although one thing I just thought about, that if you're going to come out to your parents, there's one question that you're probably going to have to answer. And this was actually the first question put at me after I told them. Well, the first thing out of my mother's mouth was, "Did something happen?" Mm-hmm. It's, I think that's one of the misconceptions about, people who come out of the faith, is the assumption that something happened that caused them to lose their faith. And for me, I wouldn't say there was anything that actually happened that caused me to lose my faith. There were things that happened that made me confront my doubt. Because when you're growing up in a religious, if you've never been in a religious household, doubt is a scary thing. It can be a scary thing when you're growing up in a very religious house, because you don't know how people are going to take it. You feel like you fear you're going to be completely ostracized, and you push that doubt away. You bury it. You try to hide it, mask it. But there inevitably comes some times whenever you're going to just hit a point where you can't ignore it. And I can identify with, say, Seth Andrews, like reading his work, where he was like, there's little things here and there, but, for him it was like the death of Rich Mullin that made him confront the things he was feeling and the doubts he had. And for me, I'd say personally for me, there was a point, I think it was early last year, when my twin brother was in a car accident. I mean, he's made a fairly good recovery, well, as good as he can. He suffered a shattered kneecap, which that's one of the worst injuries you can suffer to your legs. And there was this moment when he suffered some post-surgery complications. And there was this moment where it was, and I'm really close to my twin brother and his wife. I'm really, they're probably the closest family members I have. So there was a lot of distress. I was very emotional, and this was the moment you're supposed to pray. If you're in a religious, this is where you pray. And I felt like I was supposed to do it, and I just couldn't. I was actually tried to, and I just couldn't do it. And that's what really, really made me confront everything. Now I would say I feel like I pushed it back, the doubt back one more time, but it left my clinging to the religion just by a thread, to the point where any little thing would knock it over, is what I'd have to say. So if you're going to come out, you have to be able to deal with that question, because it's going to come up.
Well, see, you didn't pray, and your brother, he's alive, right?
Yeah.
Yep, see?
Yeah, when they got him on a better oxygen mask and better equipment, then he started to recover.
Funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it was, and I have to say, there was this point in the hospital. Well, the other thing that happened there too was his in-laws are very religious too, probably more so than my family. And I kept hearing my brother's father-in-law saying, God is good. It could have been worse. And it made me sick. It literally, every time he said it, I sometimes had to clench my fist, grit my teeth. I'd get a feeling in the bottom of my stomach, like, why are you saying that? a drunk driver at between 5 and 6 in the evening.
Wow.
I mean, that early in the evening, blowing a .24.
Wow.
So it's like, you couldn't find a way to get this, and this is about the third time. I think this was his third DUI as well. So I'm like, you couldn't find some other way to put this guy away before he did that. But of course, they would say, well, God used them to put him away.
Yeah, we had somebody came up to one of our booths one time and mentioned about how he had some doubt in God, and God, he wants to send me a signal. And his son was coming to see him, and his son accidentally rear-ended somebody, and nobody was hurt. And but that was a sign, and I forget, there's a long drawn-out story, but that was a sign. And I said, well, wait, what about the people he hit? I mean, why are they're inconvenienced? Obviously, they were going somewhere, and now they had to stop and have their car repaired. And I mean, God's sending a signal to you. Doesn't he have a better way to do it than that?
Yeah.
Why is he inconvenience these other people that had nothing to do with you and God and the signals and your son and all that? But yes, sometimes the stories are just the craziest things. You're like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would God do that? God wants to say, especially nowadays. I mean, we got Twitter and we got email and we got snail mail. We got all kinds of ways. Telephone, you can call us up, and there are better ways to communicate than that.
And kind of talking about car accidents, I think people look at a car accident and like be horrified by the way the vehicle looks. But if you know something about vehicles or design, the front end is supposed to fold up like that. Whenever there's an accident, it's how it absorbs the damage. And whenever you look at an accident, actually the worse it looks, usually that's good news for the driver, because that means energy is getting dissipated the way it's supposed to be.
I'm not a stock car fan, but I understand that when you see accidents on these race cars, that the worse it looks, the drivers survive. And yet, I know Dale Earnhardt, when he died, that accident didn't look very serious at all. If you saw it, he just bumped into the wall.
It was an abrupt impact, and that's that's why cars are designed to fold up. I mean, even our street cars, like my brother's car, the hood was almost into the driver's seat. I mean, like you could see you could actually see the frame, like the engine was pushed back from, like you could see like the bars of the frame sticking out of the front. It was pushed back that far, but we knew something about cars. Go, oh, it's designed to be able to do that.
And why did what kind of message was God sending to .24? That guy was lucky he was still alive. You can die from alcohol poisoning and get much above that.
I think around .3 is when you start to suffer some really adverse effects.
Well, that drunk driving is a whole other subject that we could get on.
Right.
Boy, we need to crack down on some of these people, but that's for another show, I guess. We'll let someone else handle that one. Now, another letter I saw here. When was this letter in here? This the other day. This was yesterday. Eat as a family and say grace together. That's the key. If you eat as a family and say grace together, that's by J. Edward Muehlbach. He tells us the very noticeable trend among churches these days, Protestant and Catholic, is the drifting away from church involvement by younger members as they move into adulthood. Well, he sees that as a problem. We don't. We see younger people becoming less religious as a good thing, I don't know if you've seen the statistics, and I haven't seen them lately, but up to 30% of young people under the age 30 or whatever it is say they are not religious. And for us, that's we're headed in the right direction. And of course, the churches see it quite differently. But I think you mentioned earlier the internet, seeing things on the internet. That's helping us quite a bit.
It was big for me. I mean, it's there was, I think a lot of it is before the age of information, there were a lot of things you could get away with. There was a lot of arguments you could get away with. Like, I thought it was funny because I was, people were sending me, my parents had me read some books of apologetics to try to bring me back. And one of the arguments they use is the prophecy of Tyre. And I actually, I started looking it up, like, well, is this information factually correct? And at the end of it, at the end of the prophecy, it says, Tyre was supposed to be wiped off the face of the earth and never rebuilt. And then somebody posts a link and goes, actually, it still exists today. And they show Google Images maps of Tyre. And it looks like a town I'd like to live in. So it was like you could get away with it was a book. One of the books they gave me was from the 70s, and I was looking through it, going, I can see them getting away with this in the 70s, because people, information wasn't as available.
Yeah. Now with the internet, we understand the Mormon Church is having some problems over in Europe. Some people are looking at the internet and finding out some of the things they were taught are not exactly that accurate, and that figures. Because back when I was growing up, you didn't have that. You had books to read, but you didn't have the instant. And the internet sometimes is full of nonsense.
Yeah, but
you gotta filter it out.
But I think people are getting better at that, and even some scholars have noted that, where it's people recognize that, and now it actually does a lot to develop critical thinking skills. And I remember reading in, I think it was one of Richard Carrier's books, where he said that, he's actually cited Wikipedia for something about science, and he left a footnote saying, I know there's a lot of bad info on Wikipedia, but for some reason the science section there is pretty good. Yeah. Because it's, you have a lot of people serious about this, and you really want to contribute to science.
People correct those, don't they?
What's that?
Don't people correct those things?
Yeah, correcting things, adding citations. Yeah. And people are realizing what good scholarly work is, because there are a lot of people who realize they go out and use one argument that gets easily debunked, and they know to fact check themselves a little better. Yeah. I've definitely reached that point too, where I think even Seth Andrews was saying this the other night on a podcast, where he's like, I look back at some of my early podcasts, and I'm like, whoa, I need to fact check myself a whole lot better.
Yeah. The world's getting smaller, isn't it? Getting flatter, as Thomas Friedman said. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was really that provided the final blow to any ties I had to religion. It was sort of funny. It was just a video about by Penn Jillette.
Oh.
Where he starts off talking about Mormonism, and I click on it thinking, the title of the video, at the time I knew nothing about Mormonism, and the title of the video was Mitt Romney's Magic Mormon Underwear. And when you see a title like that, you have to look at it. And what he did was, he starts off getting you laughing about Mormonism and their crazy beliefs, and then he starts, in the same tone of voice, goes right into Christianity. And I was sat there dumbfounded for a moment. Earlier, I might have been able to just knee-jerk reaction, what's he talking about? But it was at that point, I kind of got lured into it, and I'm like, wait, he might have a point here.
Well, Penn Jillette's pretty good. But some people think that Mormonism, because it's fairly new, is kind of picked on more than other religions. That really it's not any goofier than other religions, but it's just so new that it hasn't got the built up enough steam, I guess.
Well, I've actually argued to some people that Mormonism, to me, is actually more believable for this reason. You would think that if Jesus wanted to get the message out, he wouldn't just appear to one place in the world. Mm. Where the Mormons believed he stopped by America on his way up. So I'm like, that actually makes a little more sense, because they're a whole continent away. They're going to have to wait 1,400 years to get any sort of message. Why won't he stop on the way up? Well, the Mormons believe that. It's just a fun little argument to get.
Yeah. Since I don't believe either one of them, so it doesn't matter. But it is funny how and there's so many different religions around the world. I mean, if this guy, why can't he just do what he did back then, skywriting or something, and how he got messages across years ago, and say, look, your religion's wrong, this one's right, that one, you think he'd straighten us out. But I think for religious people, the answer to that would be that, God, his message is perfectly clear. It's the way we believe it is right, everybody else is wrong.
And that was something I had to confront at a very early age, too, and that's actually part of what led to my doubting. There was a lot of different things, but that was one of them, because on our way to the church we went to, we had to drive by 5 other ones. And I'm not talking just like little variations of what ours was. We kind of had a more mainstream run-of-the-mill Protestant church, and we drove past an Assembly of God, a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a Seventh-day Adventist, and a Catholic church. And there was one other one in there. So it's like starkly different, starkly different, not only denominations of Christianity, but, well, I guess they're all technically considered Christianity.
I guess they would all be Christian, wouldn't they? Yeah.
But they're entirely different from what we had.
Although some of those Christians don't think of other people as Christians. I know some religions don't think Catholics are Christians.
Right. So, and I think there's an argument to be made for that. But well, I mean, I like how Richard Dawkins goes into this book where he's talking about how, how can Catholics defend a label of monotheistic when they pray to saints, they pray to all these different, they have different gods. They're a polytheistic religion. Although you could actually argue the same thing about Christianity effectively.
Well, I think the Catholics believe in the one God. Then these other guys, these other guys we made them saints, though. I mean, God doesn't make them saints.
Well, the saints are believed to have power, some sort of power. Sometimes they can perform posthumous miracles. Like, actually, that's what John Paul II believed. It was a saint. Well, it was, I forget who it was, but he credited a saint for it. And maybe they don't call them a deity, but that's what they are. If you look what a deity does, especially in polytheism about the time that Christianity emerged, ancient polytheism kind of treated all the gods as equal, but bit by bit they made one master deity and the rest subordinate deities. Some good, some bad.
Well, there's a president and vice president. And all
right, all the way down to the point where you have, Judaism and Christianity that have God, and then you have his angels, which, and in the Catholic system of belief, you also have the saints, which are no real different than subordinate deities. And then you have Satan, who's essentially an evil deity.
Which, I still don't get the concept of why this God would... We have a call. Oh, we have a call coming in. All right, caller. You on the line?
Yes, the dastardly one is on the line. This is such
I can't hear him.
Could you speak up a little? We're having trouble hearing you.
That's okay. I'm having trouble talking.
Oh.
This is Doug. Oh, dastardly Doug. Can you hear me better?
That's better.
Okay. I think that one of the problems that we have with God is size. If you ask anyone, how big is God? Where is God? And everything. No one ever has an answer for what he's. I mean, if would an unbeliever look at someone size as a god? I mean, an unbeliever even us. Okay, so could we, at our size, look up the heavens, if there was a God, and see this God? Or is he maybe an interdimensional sort of a God? Maybe he's only our size. Maybe he's only 4'10", and we can't, because he's in an adjacent dimension. No one has really tried to identify God other than just to say he is all-powerful, all-seeing, and everything, but no one's got the vaguest idea what God really looks like, or could possibly look like. He really could look like the flying spaghetti monster. And if that's the case, would we, as humans, still want to worship someone that was hideously ugly as compared to us? Well, I'm going to bring off because my throat is getting sore again. But it certainly is different watching the show rather than being live.
I understand.
We'll catch you later.
Well, okay, we'll try to answer that. What size is God? Well, I guess most people believe God is just a spirit who's not really no size to him. I mean, he's just a spirit, right? He doesn't have size. He's not a big guy or a little guy. Or,
No, I have plenty of spirit.
No.
But anyway, I'll hang up on you.
Okay, so thanks for calling in.
I can't really hear it. No.
Okay. Well, you're saying, what is the size of God? How does God, well, he doesn't have any size, does he? He doesn't have a body, does he? Although, doesn't the Bible say that God created man in his own image?
Right.
So I guess I don't know. It's because men are in different images. Some are tall, some are short, some are big, some,
It's somewhat ambiguous.
Yeah.
Although some people seem to take that as just a general form of man.
Yeah.
But, I mean, all throughout the Old Testament, he physically manifests himself from time to time. Was it when he was wrestling Jacob, or when he appeared to certain people throughout the Old Testament, and actually some of the New? And then sometimes, even angels had some sort of physical description to go off of.
Oh. See, now, my Bible knowledge was long ago, and I've forgotten most of it, and I don't remember any of that. But so God actually appeared. I thought he was just a spirit, but he's got a body then, I guess, huh? Is he a big guy, a short guy? What is he?
But, well, I should take a step back here, though. If you're talking about, the kinds of arguments Oprah was making, she wasn't really, even if he's formless, even if he's, you can have arguments about a body, but he's still like sort of a person, a something. How do I describe this? Well, what I should say is, what some of these people try to do is make God seem to be more something like a feeling, or a concept, or a
a spirit, isn't it? Just a spirit?
Well, no, a spirit is more like, you kind of picture a spirit moving from place to place, or, it's something that you can communicate with, instead of a feeling or a philosophy or a theology or.
Yeah. Now, when I say spirit, though, I would think of like spirit of cooperation. Like, for instance, when the whole neighborhood gets together on a project.
That kind of, spirit in that context, I can see what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know, but I guess if, like I said, my Bible knowledge is not up to yours, obviously, because you read, about the God actually appeared. So he actually came down and talked to people, and, well,
yeah, occasionally.
Our opinion is, well, there are people out there today who thinks God talks to them, and we put them in hospitals, don't we? So we try to straighten them out. Yeah.
And then apologists will try to get up there and say God can't communicate with man, or that we are incapable of understanding him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are multiple times throughout the Bible where it says God is physically appearing to somebody. Although, you could say he's taking on the form, like, a spirit can mold itself to anything it wants to be. But yes, I can see what you're saying, where spirit can kind of, there's a cloudy definition. There's two definitions that, like you said, a spirit of cooperation is more of a feeling, where I look at, I was thinking you meant spirit in the context of an actual, like a ghost or something.
Like Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Right, that kind of a spirit. And I mean, that brings up another point, too, where sometimes they try to redefine words to mean something else, but I think in the terms of spirit, there's a legitimate ambiguity there.
Yeah, well,
and
so many words,
yeah, I think that's one thing. You got to be careful with definitions, because people like to twist and warp them to mean something else.
Yeah, you mentioned that God appeared, and some people think he appeared as a person or whatever, but he doesn't do that anymore, does he?
No.
It's funny, because the more knowledge we have, the less these things that are unexplainable happen.
Well, I mean, supposedly he talked to Paul directly, or talked to Job directly, like, the further back you go in the Old Testament, the more it happens. So it kind of tails off, and then apparently Paul was the last person.
Well, it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that the Bible was written down years after these are stories told from generation. And, of course, we all know the parlor trick about, tell somebody this something and it goes around. And we can, I can see how these stories, grew out of myths, I mean, the story about Jonah and the whale, what the hell. nobody lives inside a fish, But I can see maybe something happened where a fish grabbed somebody or something, and the person escaped. Like these shark attacks when they bite your leg and you escape. I can see how that could get blown out of proportion over thousands of years. He was inside the fish.
And that's kind of the main argument for some of the historical figures in the Bible is maybe they don't have direct evidence to them, but they think there might have been somebody.
Yes.
Like I don't know. There's a little bit of evidence proving King David, but nobody believes he had this wondrous kingdom. Not even the Hebrew archaeologists believe that. But yeah, it's hard to. Sometimes you wonder if there's a nugget of truth to it. And actually, like they say time and time again, a good myth has a nugget of truth to it.
Yeah. Well, if you in politics, you see. There's a group that does pants on fire for statements from politicians, and sometimes they will be, well, there's a little bit of truth to this statement, but mostly it's a lie, So that kind of thing, things like I said, blown out of proportion, and that's easy enough to do. You can see how that can happen. I mean, and to people that look at the Bible and think that stuff really. Now, there's some religions take the Bible literally. They think it's literally true.
I know people who believe in a literal firmament. I'm not kidding either. Where it's every last bit of truth. They believe, that, there might have been. They recently believed water was in outer space, and that's how we got flooded. And there are some people who are that gung-ho literalist. And if you try to logically reason with them, they will start to insert miracles left and right to the point, and that's the problem with it, is you can't disprove that. They can make it mean whatever they want. They can say, well, he designed the fossil record to deceive us or test our faith, and what do you do with that? And
well, the bottom line is people believe what they want to believe. If you want to really want to believe something, you will believe it against all evidence, against all.
And I think the main purpose of why I want to be an activist is to help people who are struggling with doubt, saying, "Hey, it's okay if you do that." There are people who don't believe that, and it's just, and I think it's and once you start being able to open people up to doubt and dealing with it, I think that has a positive impact on a lot of other aspects. Like I know I've become. Going through this process has also helped me form better arguments politically as well, because you start to question authoritative arguments. And I think that's a bigger, better objective. I'd like to see more atheists, but I think ultimately the goal should be, free thought. That is why we call it a free thought forum, is not just in terms of religion, but you need to apply that to everything.
Well, that's why we have booths around in the summertime. We have various fairs and whatnot, and it's great to have people come up to us and say, "I didn't know there were atheists around here. I didn't know I'm a like-minded person, but I didn't know there was anyone like this." It really, it really helps us get the message out and let people know they're not alone. People like yourselves, a lot of young people come up to us and say, or.
Especially when, coming from a secluded homeschool family, I literally was alone for a long time.
Well, you found us. And speaking of that, we're winding down now. We've got about a minute left. Let's talk about what Pennsylvania Nonbelievers. We have a website. If Jim could put that website up, that will tell you where any information you want to know about Pennsylvania Nonbelievers, especially about our meetings. We have meetings here in York the first Saturday every month in the Carriage House at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We have meetings in Lancaster and in Lemoyne, which is the one Jacob usually goes to. That's the second Thursday every month. But if you want information, we have meetings in Chambersburg, Lebanon. If you're interested in any of our meetings, just look on our website. You'll see them there. And if you have any information, it also has information about Pennsylvania Nonbelievers. If you have any questions for us, you can actually submit questions through there, I believe. Or Jim can put up a spot where you can ask questions of us if you want us to answer any questions. If you want to call in next time and ask us, feel free to do so. Our next show will be November 12th, Tuesday, November 12th, 6 o'clock again. And we'll